I get this question quite a lot. How do I find my passion? So what would be your advice to somebody like that to explain to them that it's about the patience, it's about growing it?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's start with Steve Jobs. So the reason I opened with Steve Jobs is that he gave this commencement address in Stanford. It was very famous, right? It's been viewed millions and millions of times, and it was interpreted basically as him saying, "Yeah, follow your passion." In fact, I went back and found the Stanford Daily News newspaper from the next day. The headline of the article about Jobs' speech was Jobs encourages graduates to follow their dreams. Yet, if you go back and look at Steve Jobs' life, that's not what he did. So I went back and I really excavated Steve Jobs' life. This was before the Isaacson biography. This was before, I was talking to actual people who knew him, right? In the period immediately leading up to him and Woz bringing the Apple One circuit board to the Byte shop in Mountain View and really kicking off what became Apple Computer. In the period immediately leading up to that, there is nothing about Jobs' life that would indicate that he had a strong passion for technology entrepreneurship. I mean, he was really into notions of Zen, which had just been brought there, in meditation, a lot of self-discovery. He had been doing some work for Atari and other places, but was actually losing jobs because he cared so little about it that he would just disappear for a month at a time. They're like, sorry, I can't keep you employed. Like, he was all over the place searching, nothing about it. If you went back into a time machine, 1 month before the Apple One board and said, like, what is your passion? You got to follow your passion, right? Steve Jobs would not have ended up starting Apple Computer. If you'd gone back and convinced him at that time, you have to follow your passion, he would have ended up probably like a very popular meditation teacher at the Zen center that he was visiting a lot. Like, that's probably what he would have said his passion was at the time. He stumbled into this, right? So they were hanging out at this hacker collective, and they were seeing there's this original chip. Details don't matter, but this sort of the first microprocessor had come along. It was meant actually to be a general purpose semiconductor, so it could play the role of a bunch of conductors, but hobbyists were like, hey, you could build a computer with this. And Woz built this thing, and they saw the reaction, and he's like, hey, we should try to sell this. And it kind of escalated from there. But what do we learn from his story? Which was, it's not about, I'm meant to do this, so let me figure that out in advance and go after it. It's, here is something that is interestingly, let me go after this interesting thing passionately, and then see what comes next. And so the whole framework I advise to people, especially in that book, is that it's all about what I call career capital. As you build rare and valuable skills, you get more leverage over your work. You get more leverage over how you work, when you work, what you work on. If you apply that leverage, you can make your career better and better, something that resonates more, something that's more passionate, and away from things that's more drudgery. So choose something that is interesting, fits well with pre-existing skills or inclinations or talents, and that opens up interesting opportunities if and when you do it well. And then, like a craftsperson, try to do it as well as possible, get as good as possible, as quick as possible, and use that as leverage to keep evolving it towards more and more interesting places. That's the framework that 9 times out of 10 explains how people who today would say, I love my work, how they got there.
Yeah, I think what happens a lot is we look at the successful entrepreneur, Steve Jobs, one of the greatest of all time, and we're looking at his built passion. Like you say, we're looking at the end result of that, and we're missing everything in between. So yeah, I mean, a leap of faith, I guess, in certain aspects as well is would be good as well. I think we feel like time is so precious and we don't want to waste it, and I think we all get caught up. And something we'll touch on as well is like the social media side of things. Like, everything's happening so fast apparently online, and it's this appearance that we need to act quick, and hopefully we can go through some of that. I've made some notes on it. One thing I did want to talk on, which is slightly away from this, is the deep work, flow state. Super interesting. At the moment, we're editing a documentary, and we trying to run a business alongside it, and it's really difficult. It's that constantly the train of thought's been broken. So yeah, what is deep work or flow state, and how does it apply to the majority of people?
So deep work came as a response to that book on career advice, because I wrote that book on career advice saying, get really good at things. And so then people said, well, how do I get really good at things? And a big part of that answer was deep work. And so it's why it was the follow-up to that 2012 book. And so deep work is just my term for where you are concentrating without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. So you're giving something your full attention. But that without distraction piece is a key attribute of the definition. Without distraction means no context shifting. This is something that a lot of people don't realize, and it causes a lot of issues in terms of actually trying to do cognitive work, which is, we know multitasking is bad. We've known this since the early 2000s, that if I'm literally trying to do two things simultaneously, okay, I can't really do them simultaneously. I'm switching back and forth. I'll do both worse. We know this. It's why if I'm working on editing a documentary or writing an article, I'm not going to keep my email inbox open while I'm doing it, or I'm not going to be on a phone call while I'm trying to write. I can't actually do both. We all recognize that, and we basically don't do that anymore. What we don't realize for the most part, however, is that when you do a quick check of something, so you have to glance at email, you have to glance at Slack, you glance at what's going on social media on your phone, and then come back to the main thing. There is a long after effect of that quick check. It could last 10 or 15 minutes after that check happens. What happens from a neurological perspective is that we're slow to completely change our cognitive context. So when we see something that's highly salient, like a emotionally affecting social media post or emails that we need to get back to these people eventually, but we can't get back to them right now, but we know they're waiting for something, it initiates a context shift. In the brain, there's networks that are being inhibited, other networks that are being amplified. So we start this expensive context shift, and these can take a long time to actually finish. We don't let it finish because we're just glancing. Then we come back to editing the documentary or working on our article. And now we're trying to abort that context shift and then get our brain back to the context of what we're working on. And so what we end up with is this collision of initiated, aborted, initiated context shifts, the effect of which is cognitive capacity reduces, cognitive fatigue raises, and a background hum of anxiety is enhanced. So what is happening right now to a lot of people who are doing high-level knowledge work is that they think they're editing a documentary full-time. They think they're writing an article full-time because these quick checks of email and Slack and their phone, they only take 30 seconds and they don't have it open at the same time. But each of those quick checks is leaving this residue. And before that residue can clear, which might take 15 minutes before you're fully back in the context of the work, you check it again. And then you check it again. And so we're putting ourselves in this self-enforced state of reduced cognitive capacity. It feels terrible and we're exhausted. It's probably the feeling you're having trying to work on a documentary while having to context shift to all these business-related matters. So deep work is I'm not only focusing on something hard, I'm doing it for an extended amount of time with none of those context shifts. I'm basically avoiding those things that brings down my capacity so I can actually operate at high capacity. And I think it's a critical behavior for success in any sort of non-trivial knowledge work, is the ability to give each thing attention until you reach a stopping point. So it can be your full cognitive context is the thing you're working on. This is how you unlock the full potential of your brain, avoid fatigue, avoid anxiety. One thing at a time, giving each thing its attention due, not having this background interleaved concurrent quick checks of all these channels simultaneously. I think that is the key to satisfaction, actually producing stuff that you're proud of.